A poor little girl named Evie was just kicked out of her village by the village chief for being considered an unstarred one, according to him. These are unfortunate people who will bring disaster upon others. In this world, when a child turns 5, they are granted a skill based on star rank. And Evie was granted the Tamer skill, but with 0 stars, hence her situation. Even her own relatives despised her, forcing the little girl to set up a secret base in the forest to survive. Luckily, a kind fortune teller woman in the village took her in. A few years later, after the woman passed away, Evie decided to leave the village and begin her life wandering and scavenging to make a living. It seems she was reincarnated into this world but has almost no memories of her past life. Today, while rummaging through some trash, Evie found a few old HP potions and a torn map. Suddenly, Evie noticed a group of fierce-looking people feeding trash to some slimes. They were tamers hired by the village chief to deal with her. Realizing the cruelty of that old man, Evie had no choice but to run far away. She ran day and night to a remote swamp area, only to be attacked by a bunch of slimes and fall off a cliff. Luckily, Evie was only slightly injured, but to treat herself, she had to use those expired HP potions. Having not bathed in a long time, she decided to find a small stream and let herself soak. Afterwards, Evie decided to change herself by cutting her long, smooth, satin-like hair. The fortune teller used to advise her that traveling as a boy would be less dangerous. She also discarded the name Famicia given by her parents and chose a new name for herself, Evie. This name came from a type of plant that always gets trampled on, much like her harsh life. Then Evie came to a grassy field and spotted a weak, quite adorable slim. It was the weakest of all slim species. Called the melting slim, it got its name because it disintegrates upon any physical impact. Moreover, its lifespan is only about a day. Because of its inherent uselessness, no human ever bothered to study it. Evie, however, was very happy to have met a creature also considered the weakest, just like herself. As she watched, the slim kept getting blown away by the wind, forcing Evie to work hard to save it. Finding it so fragile, she decided to stay by its side to protect it from the wind. As night fell, Evie began telling Slim about her own difficult life. The gods are so unfair, creating so many people living in happiness while others, like her, are so unfortunate. Evie once had a happy life like any other child before she turned 5. Everyone's future in this world is determined by their skill and star rank. Evie's mother had a 1-star sewing skill and her father had a 2-star carpentry skill. But their daughter ended up with a monster taming skill and 0 stars. So useless she couldn't even tame weak monsters, let alone fierce beasts. When the villagers learned the truth, everyone showed open contempt. However, Evie had one difference from everyone else: she possessed memories of a past life. Sometimes a voice would whisper in her head, leaving her feeling quite confused. In the past, only one person treated Evie kindly, the fortune teller woman. The magical bag she carries was also a gift from her, but now she's gone. Speaking of this, Evie burst into tears, unable to understand why being 0-star makes people hate her so much in this world. Despite all the hardships, Evie was very happy today because she made a new friend. The next morning when she woke up, Evie found that little Slim had disappeared. Remembering that melting slimes vanish after a day, Evie was so sad she could cry. But when she opened her old map, she saw Slim hiding inside. Turns out this species can live longer than a day, proving that the knowledge written in books isn't necessarily correct. So Evie decided to try taming this Slim with her meager magical power. After studying the book and fumbling around 7 by 7 equals 49 times, she finally succeeded in taming it. She also decided to name it Sora after all that. The two considered the weakest had officially become partners on the scavenging and exploring journey. Feeling starving, Evie realized how hard it was to survive in this forest. Evie quickly turned into a hunter and caught a plump field mouse that looked delicious. Just by looking at it, she skillfully used her nimble hands to skin and butcher the mouse. Then Evie wrapped the mouse meat in leaves to save for hungry days. Each piece looked perfectly square and tempting, making you want to take a bite. According to the fortune teller, Evie's destination was a town near the royal capital of this country. Evie's hometown was Latomi village, though not on the map. She still knew the direction she needed to go. The immediate task was to reach Ottle Town. The little green blob beside her kept pushing, almost getting blown away by the wind. Luckily, Evie managed to grab it with her quick hands. Suddenly, the sound of something approaching made Evie run for her life. The noise grew clearer, so she quickly climbed a tree and held her breath to hide. It was a horde of giant, ferocious-looking ants, seemingly ready to devour anyone. Luckily, she escaped once again. If she wasn't careful, she wouldn't know what might take her life. Not sure if it was an illusion, but Evie felt Sora suddenly become much heavier. Still, she had no time to worry, as the wound from a tree branch earlier hadn't been treated. If it got infected, it would be a big problem. Evie rummaged for some potions and applied them to the wound. Because their quality was so poor, one bottle wasn't enough. She had to use 3 whole bottles before feeling better. After that intense self-treatment session, Evie realized she had run out of blue potions. She had brought so many, but she had no idea where they all went on her way to find the village. Evie was surprised to see a wanted poster for herself nailed to a tree. They were offering a bounty on her head for a measly 500 coins. Evie couldn't understand why the village would do this just to find her. Strangely, each wanted poster drew Evie differently. Some were so ugly her own parents probably wouldn't recognize her, while others made her look as radiant as a movie star. Truly baffling how they could draw her face so chaotically. After a long, tiring journey, the girl finally reached the village before dark. She watched people using magic for their daily chores and felt envious. Even to kids her age had their own skills, all with names she'd never heard before, like Quick Run, Search, or even Intimidate. Passing by a bakery made Evie's stomach rumble with craving for carbs. She suddenly remembered her packets of mouse meat. Maybe she could sell them for some money. But she just stood hesitantly in front of the butcher shop, not knowing how to speak up. Luckily, the perceptive uncle, relying only on his keen sense of smell like a hunting dog, guessed what Evie wanted to sell. The uncle was extremely surprised by how skilled this kid seemed, then decided to buy all of Evie's meat for 100 coins. For a dirt poor girl like her, this was a huge bargain. Lately, people have been hunting only big game, so the uncle was running low on mouse meat. The chewy texture with a hint of smokiness perfectly suited his taste. Now a girl with money, Evie entered the bakery to browse. The saleswoman immediately realized she wasn't from the village, remembering the wanted poster offering 500 coins. Evie had to lie that she was from a neighboring village. Actually, this was her first time buying anything, so she didn't know the coin denominations, leaving the saleswoman speechless. After buying 2 loaves of bread, Evie shared half with Sora and leisurely nibbled on the rest. But Sora seemed unwilling to eat, melting into a puddle with a pouty face. Evie couldn't figure out what the slim liked to eat. After eating, Evie continued wandering in the forest and stumbled upon a garbage dump. Happy as if she'd found treasure. There were some expired potions, but this time they looked too disgusting. Using them would probably land her in the hospital. After sorting through a pile of discarded bottles, Evie discovered Sora's ability to decompose trash. With a few gurgles, the pile of bottles melted away. Only super rare slimes can destroy inorganic matter like this. However, it's quite picky and won't just put anything in its mouth. But when it came to recovery potions, especially the blue ones, it would gobble up as many as it could. Evie wanted to save a few bottles but couldn't because this kid's eating speed was too fast. Afterwards, Evie went back to hunting mice and traded them with the butcher uncle for another 250 coins. Now a wealthy lady, she could probably buy the whole bakery. She bought a dozen sweets to satisfy her craving and even got some freebies from the baker. Because she was cute, Evie's life in the forest remained very peaceful. Mornings by the stream, evenings in the cave munching bread. This kind of life almost made her want to stay forever. Everyone in the village was kind, completely opposite to where she came from. However, the next day, Evie spotted those adventurers from before searching for her. Those jerks saw the kid carrying so many magic bags and started teasing her, scaring Evie into running for her life. Luckily, she had cut her hair, so they didn't recognize her as Famicia. Evie ran into the kind butcher uncle again. Because those adventurers had come to the village, all the dried meat and such had been bought up. So the uncle wanted to continue buying field mice from her. Too bad Evie was in no state of mind for hunting mice. Her face was plastered at the butcher shop, even at the bakery, so she had no choice but to flee, leaving the shopkeeper baffled. That day, Evie cried a lot. It was such a good village, why did this have to happen? With no other choice, Evie had to avoid crossing paths with those adventurers. Suddenly, her stomach growled fiercely. Oh, the plight of the poor, penniless again. Walking along, Evie discovered a stream with a fruit tree. But those plump wild fruits turned out to be bait for a grotesque tree monster. Evie spotted a human hand dangling from the tree trunk. She was scared stiff, unable to move. Luckily, Sora was alert and pushed her out of the monster's grasp. Evie snapped out of it and ran for her life, but the scenery around her kept fading. Then she noticed a chunk of flesh missing from her arm, blood gushing out. Losing too much blood, she collapsed, dying. Before closing her eyes, she saw Sora nibbling on her bloody hand. After all, Sora is a monster and monsters eat humans, so what else could it do? Years ago, a family welcomed the birth of a very cute baby girl named Famicia. In a flash, Famicia was 4 years old and deeply loved by her whole family. In the mornings, she would bring lunch to her father and older brother at work. In the afternoons, she stayed home helping her mother and sister with chores. Her eldest sister sometimes felt jealous of how much their parents doted on Famicia. Peaceful life flowed on until the day she turned 5, the time when children receive their skills from the gods. Besides her parents, Famicia had an older sister with a 1-star healing skill and an older brother with a 3-star furniture skill. Femicia herself hoped to receive the tamer skill so she could befriend many animals. To make his little sister happy, her brother even made her cute wooden animals. Just then, the fortune teller Luba came by to give her a blessing. Remembering when Femicia was 2, her mother had also invited her. The reason was that the girl often spoke strange things about past life memories or reincarnation. Back then, Luba told her not to tell anyone else about those things as it would be very dangerous. After the blessing ceremony, her sister was also curious about what skill Femicia would get. But Luba couldn't tell as her own fortune-telling skill was only 1 star. The next day, Femicia, with her parents, was at the church for the skill-bestowing ceremony. She excitedly ran to touch the water basin to receive the blessing. The priest announced that Femicia's skill was tamer, making the whole family overjoyed. However, his expression quickly changed when he discovered Femicia's tamer skill had 0 stars. Her parents thought there was a mistake, but the priest insisted this was a judgment from the gods and couldn't be wrong. Femicia's father returned home and could only drown his sorrows in alcohol. Having fathered a 0-star child, this meant the gods had abandoned her. Femicia's mother could only cry in despair, and her siblings' attitudes also began to change. Not just her family, but all the villagers, upon hearing the news, constantly cursed and despised her, especially the village chief. Completely helpless, Femicia could only run and hide in the mountains. There, she crawled into a cave and survived by eating wild fruits. Trying to make fire with her meager magic exhausted her and she fainted. Luckily, the fortune teller Luba came to help in time. From her fortune telling, she had foreseen this suffering. Yet she still couldn't find the reason why Femicia had no stars. Luba warned Femicia never to use magic to the point of exhaustion as it could be life-threatening. She didn't understand why Femicia's mana was so low, but for Luba, knowledge was the most important thing. Saying this, she gave Femicia a magical bag with large capacity and a few books. In the future, Femicia would travel far and eventually reach a town in the royal capital. So these books would be useful. She hoped that on her journey, the girl would find a trustworthy friend or a suitable place to settle down. From that day on, Femicia lived in a cave in the forest. The fortune teller taught her basic survival skills like fishing, making fire, and many other things. She also scavenged trash dumps for old potions. Femicia lived like this for 3 years until the day the fortune teller stopped visiting her. She also noticed many people entering the forest searching for her. So she guessed something had happened in the village. Risking a return, she heard that Luba had passed away. Not only that, Femicia accidentally learned of a plot by her own father and the village chief to make Femicia disappear from this world. Hearing this, she nearly collapsed, unable to believe her loved ones would push her to such extremes. Afterwards, the village chief announced the fortune teller's death to all the villagers. He claimed she had been punished by a divine curse for daring to care for an unstarred one, and demanded the villagers capture Femicia to prevent disaster. Hearing this, the girl fled the village, but ultimately her own father caught her. Back to the present, Evie just had a terrible dream. Waking up to find Sora lying on her arm, she thought she was about to be eaten. Even so, that would still be better than falling into the villagers' hands. The next morning, Evie woke up to find her wound completely healed. Only then did she understand that Sora hadn't been eating her flesh last night, but healing her. Not only that, Sora suddenly started talking, even if it only managed to say pwapwa. Evie was so moved she hugged the little guy tight. Before, she was always abandoned by everyone, but just having Sora by her side was enough. From today, Evie decided she would try to live a little longer to journey with Sora. After a terrifying night, the two climbed a tree to catch a safe nap. Early the next morning, Sora the Slim kept going pwapwa like an alarm clock. Evie felt it was wonderful just to be able to open her eyes and move her limbs. Sora was still eating heartily, finishing almost all of Evie's blue potions. Lately, it seemed much more agile and sturdy, no longer getting blown away by the wind. Evie's breakfast was very simple, just a few wild fruits she'd picked. Maybe when she reached Latomi village, she'd have to buy some dried meat. Normally, hunting and eating yourself is cheaper than selling and buying back. But that wasn't possible because casually lighting a fire to roast meat in the forest would be like announcing a barbecue buffet to all the monsters. Also, the road ahead was still long, so Evie wanted to keep some cash on hand for safety. While lost in thought, Sora had already finished off the remaining potions. These were Evie's last few bottles, yet this little guy still wanted more. Evie wandered around and was lucky to find another dump, including a whole crate of potion bottles for Sora to feast on. It was still as gluttonous as ever, gobbling up both old and new blue bottles. This time, it even progressed to eating orange curative potions. But not everything was worthy of entering this eating machine's mouth. After Sora ate its fill, they continued their journey. With the clear blue sky and sunny weather, Evie even spotted a bunch of wild fruits to pick. No need to guess what's for dinner tonight. As for Sora, for some reason, it ate and ate, downing 5 huge potion bottles in one go and still wanting more. At this rate, there wouldn't be any healing potions left for themselves, let alone for Sora. Maybe it's in a growth spurt, which would explain its appetite. If so, the only option now was to coax this kid to sleep so it would stop asking for food. Evie carried Sora up a tree branch and started telling a fairy tale. Long, long ago, on the other side of the sky, a terrible war broke out in the world. The king summoned those with prophetic powers to see the future. What they saw was a terrifying vision of humanity's extinction. To protect the world, mages used a forgotten magic that only otherworldly children could use. Telling this story, Evie got so sleepy she drifted off. Waking up the next morning, she saw that all the potions in her bag had been devoured by Sora. Evie continued wandering the forest, setting mouse traps to earn some money. Strangely enough, she ended up trapping a snake monster. But even a monster, it would just go into a jar for pickling. On the way to the village, Evie discovered a horrific accident scene. A cargo wagon was smashed to pieces, people and horses dead, blood everywhere. She didn't dare stay long, afraid whatever caused this was still lurking nearby. Evie ran with all her might and finally reached Latomi village. She went to the town hall to report the incident. She explained the situation about the cargo wagon and confirmed they were attacked by a monster. Then a tall, dark, handsome guy came over and asked why it had to be a monster, not bandits. If it was a monster, there was a high chance they'd attack the village. Evie, with her quick mind, analyzed the details, leaving everyone speechless. Based on the wagon's condition and the bodily injuries, it couldn't have been bandits. Why would bandits bother punching the horses and leaving the cargo untouched? That sounded reasonable, so the tall guy quickly ordered his subordinates to go check the situation. Who knew reporting something could earn a reward? The receptionist gave her a form and told her to come back when the information was confirmed. Next, Evie needed to sell that orange snake. Money is essential. Luckily, the snake monster she caught was rare and valuable, worth 3 silver coins. Since 1 silver coin equals 100 copper coins. Selling the snake meant Evie got the equivalent of 30 field mice, a great deal. Leaving the shop, Evie headed to the dump to find food for her piggy Slim. Sora, there? She found over 20 magic bags of various types, all vying for space. Truly, only brand name bags attract girls. To carry them all, she sorted them into 4 types with different functions. After racking her brains for a while, she successfully stuffed 21 bags into one. Suddenly, a large crowd gathered in the village. The tall guy from earlier and his team had investigated and confirmed the presence of a monster. Not just any monster, but traces of an Orsker beast were found at the scene. Following the trail, the subjugation team had located the Orsker. This meant Evie could now go to the town hall and claim her reward. The situation was a bit critical, so she shouldn't leave the village. At the town hall, the receptionist asked for the form, but Evie couldn't remember which bag it was in. She had to dig through a mountain of bags until she finally found it. With information about 5 deceased people, Evie received 1 silver card equivalent to 50 mice plus 2 gold coins for the high-level monster. Doing the math, Evie realized she now possessed the equivalent of 250 field mice. Becoming a rich lady again. She left, almost forgetting to pack up her mountain of bags. Walking down the street, everyone kept staring at her. Turns out, it was because she was carrying so many bags, everyone found it strange. That evening, Evie spread her mat to rest in the adventurers' gathering area. She didn't dare let Sora out of the bag for fear of danger. Their next destination would be a larger village. Having earned so much today, she felt incredibly happy. This adventure was getting more and more interesting, especially with Sora by her side. Hopefully, along the way, she'd make more friends, meet more kind people, and most importantly, earn more money. Money, 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 hurry up and flow into Sis's wallet. Today, Evie went to check her mouse traps and found them broken, meaning no income. But past life memories reminded her she still had reward money from the Latomi village info. Just then, Sora spotted something and ran straight into the forest. Since the little guy only said pupua, Evie didn't understand but followed anyway. There, Evie discovered an injured black panther. According to the book, this was an Adondala, an extremely ferocious monster species. Knowing it was dangerous, Evie still approached and petted it. Having gone through a similar plight herself. Just as it was about to collapse, Sora suddenly jumped in and healed it. A few hours later, the Black Panther fully recovered and cheerfully thanked Evie. Normally, it would take high-level adventurers a year to tame this kind of monster. Anyone meeting it in the forest would be as good as dead. Yet here, Evie approached and befriended it with ease. Although the panther followed her, she didn't know if that counted as being friends. But anyway, she decided to name it Sleo, meaning blue sky. However, Evie didn't know why she knew that. Now she just wished she had a little more magical power to fully tame Sleo. Just as they were about to reach Latomi village, Sleo voluntarily melted back into the forest, and Sora hopped into the magic bag. At the village gate, there was a scary-looking red-haired uncle. Just then, a traveler from afar arrived seeking a friend. However, the red-haired uncle quickly recognized him as a liquor smuggler and ordered his guards to throw him in jail. Seeing how scary this guy was, Evie thought about backing out. But running now would only make him more suspicious. So she braced herself and stepped forward, her timid, hunched posture immediately catching his attention. Just as she was struggling for an answer, a mantis landed on the uncle's shoulder. Seizing the moment, Evie tried to slip into the village, but it wasn't that easy. She had to admit she came from Latomi village. The uncle was quite surprised, as that place was very far away and had just gone through a major crisis. So he encouraged Evie to become an adventurer to make a living. This was also how Evie learned about the trouble in her hometown. Upon arriving at the larger village, Evie's first task was to find the butcher shop. Besides field mice, they also sold wild pigeons, but in limited quantities as they were hard to hunt. The owner guessed Evie wanted to hunt and warned her to be careful of wild boars. They were probably the ones wrecking her mouse traps. Tonight, instead of sleeping in the forest, she decided to stay at the Adventurers Square. It was very spacious, but the manager was quite intimidating. He gave Evie a wooden token as a pass to enter the square. Inside were countless tents of all sizes, while Evie only had a tiny mat. Thinking that with a tent, Sora could come out more comfortably, she decided to use her savings to buy one. On the way, she accidentally bumped into the scary red-haired gatekeeper, freaking her out. Surprised that Evie didn't even own a tent, he guessed she was kicked out with nothing. So he personally took her to a good tent seller. However, his manner was a bit rough. So the bespectacled guy with him had to remind him to be gentler with children. The shop owner was also amazed that Evie was so young and from Latomi village. Seeing Evie stammer, the red-haired uncle asked for an affordable but good quality tent. There were many types with different features, but Evie just wanted to know the prices. The old man asked for her budget and learned she had 1 silver card and 2 gold coins. Everyone was surprised the little girl had so much money. Evie had to explain she earned it selling information about the monster in Latomi village. The old man then brought out a brand new tent at a reasonable price for Evie. He mentioned that the last person who bought this tent immediately got a girlfriend and quit adventuring. As a special customer, he sold it to her for just 1 silver card. If it were the red-haired uncle, no discount at all. He also gave Evie a pen to mark the tent as hers. Thanks to past life memories, Evie wrote Sora in Japanese on it. The old man also threw in a small, authentic magic bag for storing money. Leaving the shop, Evie immediately thanked the red-haired uncle for recommending such a good tent shop. Returning to the square, she spent the whole afternoon setting up her cute little tent. Sora was thrilled to have a new home. So Evie decided to have a small celebration for buying a new house. While it was still light, she went to the dump to find some old potions for Sora. But as she stepped out, a group of fur adventurers approached, accusing her of stealing their tent. Evie insisted she bought it, but they didn't believe a brat like her could afford such a nice tent. They threatened to beat her if she didn't hand it over. Just then, the manager appeared and warned them not to cause trouble. However, they claimed they just lost their tent and this kid was the thief. When the manager asked where they bought it, none could answer. He immediately confirmed this was Evie's tent, introduced by the captain and vice-captain of the village guard. With clear evidence, the adventurers had no choice but to flee. But it wasn't that easy. The manager whistled and a bunch of soldiers appeared to collar them all. Evie thanked him for his help but wondered how he knew it was her tent. Turns out, the red-haired uncle had stopped by earlier and told him to look out for a kid setting up her own tent. But he slipped up and let this happen, so as an apology, he gave Evie a high-quality blue potion. That evening, Evie had a little party, giving Sora lots of old potions while she ate bread and dried meat. However, Sora wanted the good potions and kept going pupua. The next morning, Evie prepared to go hunting, but for some reason, everywhere she went, guards greeted her. When she finally got to the forest to check her mouse traps, they were all smashed by wild boars. Days of hunting gone down the drain with no income. Suddenly, Sleo emerged with over a dozen rabbits in its mouth as a gift for her. She had no idea how this panther caught so many rabbits. Evie joyfully hugged it and quickly started processing each rabbit. Freshness was key for selling. After a while of hard work, Evie finished processing them and divided them into small packets. She woke Sora, who was sleeping soundly on Sleo's back, to head back to the village. Seeing Evie about to leave, Sleo said goodbye and vanished into the forest. Little Sora was getting stronger, no longer as weak as when they first met. Still just as mischievous, though. The rabbit meat Sleo brought was so fresh the butcher lady was impressed. Catching rabbits without damaging them must require some special technique. Seeing the girl hesitate, the butcher understood it was probably a trade secret and didn't pry. Thanks to the rabbit meat, Evie sold it for a whole 855 coins. Returning to her tent, Evie was still greeted by everyone like in the morning. Scared, she hid in a corner and accidentally met the bespectacled vice captain. Turns out, the red-haired captain had gone around asking everyone to help an adventurer named Evie. Though still small, she had to struggle on her own, so he was very concerned. Evie was touched by his kindness but also worried about becoming too conspicuous. Just then, her eyes stopped at a fruit stall. They were selling Zalo fruit, but the price was quite high. The stall owner said it was very hard to import some Zalo from Latomi village. This fruit could only be imported from there, but this year's crop failed, making it extremely rare. He was surprised to learn she was a refugee from that village. Probably something that stupid village chief did. Latomi village was protected by the fortune teller Luba, especially regarding that Zalo fruit. The harvest time was always unpredictable. Missing it by even a little ruined everything. So Luba used her fortune telling to predict the exact harvest time. Zalo was the village's main income, so she always had the villagers' support. But that ignorant village chief didn't like that. When Luba fell ill, he deliberately withheld medicine, leading to her tragic death. Worse, he blamed it all on a child. Since Latomi village lost Luba, they couldn't harvest Zalo and fell into a severe economic crisis. The village chief then tried to ration food but faced opposition. Some families left the village, others who opposed him were driven out. Evie's parents sided with the chief, leaving her no choice but to flee. Moved by her story, the stall owner gave her one Zalo fruit. Evie wondered how her family was doing after such a big upheaval. But she felt her life now was pretty good. She had Sora, Sleo, and past life memories, making her happier than countless other unfortunate souls. The taste of the Zalo fruit was exactly like when she was little. It was the taste Luba had protected, one she could never forget. The next day, Evie was back in the forest setting mouse traps. Suddenly, the two shady guys who tried to steal her tent before reappeared. This time, they plotted to steal Sora, knowing it was an ultra-rare slim. Evie quickly tricked the big guy into running into one of her mouse traps. Seeing his big head but tiny brain, his female accomplice laughed at him. Who knew that little girl was so mischievous and also a gold digger? Then Evie was grabbed by the big guy and lifted into the air. Just as he was about to rob her, Sleo appeared just in time. Recognizing it as an Adondala, the two were scared shitless. The girl fainted first. The big guy, braver, ran for his life. But he couldn't escape. Sleo leaped ahead, blocking his path and roared, making the bastard faint. Seeing how skilled it was, it must have done this many times. Maybe those rabbits were caught the same way. Just then, the two guard uncles appeared, so Sleo quickly hid in the forest. Hearing the monsters roar and people screaming, they rushed over. Evie just waited and showed them the two guys who were almost scared to death. Turns out these shady characters were under investigation. They often bullied weaker adventurers to steal their money and goods. Not only that, these two cowards were wanted murderers. They'd face proper punishment, so Evie had nothing to fear. Not only that, she even got a reward for helping capture the criminals. In total, she would receive 2 gold coins and 3 silver coins, equivalent to 2,300 field mice. Adding the 2,800 mice worth from the Latomi village info, that's over 5,100 mice, a ton of money. With such a large sum, the red-haired uncle wanted to help her open an account at the merchant guild. He would be her guarantor. The procedure required a drop of blood. As soon as Evie touched it, her personal information appeared. The uncle read it and couldn't believe this skinny, frail girl was already 8 years old. Evie entered the deposit room, knocked a few times, and someone appeared to collect the money. Trippy. Now she had a bank card and could withdraw money anywhere. The red-haired uncle disappeared for a whole day without notice, getting thoroughly scolded by the bespectacled uncle. To cool down, the two uncles took Evie to try the local specialty, grilled wild boar skewers. They unhesitatingly ordered 10 huge skewers. Evie had no idea how she'd finish them, but she had to admit it was delicious. Thanks to the owner's 4-star cooking skills, the uncles asked about Evie's skill. If suitable, maybe she could join the guard later. Evie said she was a tamer but didn't want to say how many stars. The two looked at each other knowingly and comforted her that even 1 star was admirable. Plenty of multi-star people don't live well, so she shouldn't worry and just live proudly as herself. Evie happily bid them farewell. Little did they know she had 0 stars. The next day, Evie said goodbye to the 2 kind uncles to continue her journey. Unbeknownst to her, they knew all about Evie. The departure list from Latomi village didn't have her name, only a record of an 8-year-old girl who fled. Perhaps this kid's secret wasn't just her gender. The red-haired uncle was a bit sad she didn't trust them. Maybe being abandoned by Latomi village had left too many scars. Today, Sora was hyperactive for some reason, running and jumping everywhere, tiring Evie out. Past life memories suggested Sora might have changed after healing Sleo's wounds. Simply put, Sora evolved by absorbing injuries. Still, Evie didn't really understand what evolution meant. Just then, she stumbled upon a field of crops destroyed by wild boars. Evie wondered how big a boar must be to cause this much damage. If it appeared, she'd have to turn tail and run. As she said that, a noise came from a nearby bush. Thinking it was a giant wild boar, Evie hugged Sora tight in fear. Turns out, it was Sleo. It had been secretly following to protect Evie, making her overjoyed. That evening, Evie set up camp in the forest, dinner being some fragrant grilled skewers. She thanked Sleo for the fancy dinner thanks to the rabbits it brought. Sora's meal was still the usual blue potions. Unbeknownst to them, something was silently watching Evie from afar. The next morning, she got up early to check her mouse traps but caught nothing. Lamenting her empty-handedness, Evie sensed a dangerous presence. Suddenly, a mysterious purple smoke appeared, chasing her, forcing her to run for her life. Cornered at a cliff's edge, Evie watched a mysterious figure emerge from the purple smoke. Just then, Sleo leaped forward, roaring, dispersing the smoke. This puzzling appearance left Evie very confused. For safety, she decided to ride Sleo across the cliff. Suddenly, an Orsker monster climbed up from below. Sleo immediately recognized the danger and charged to fight it, causing both to tumble into the river below. Before Evie could react, 7 more Orsker monsters slid down the slope to attack. Terrified, she ran headlong until she ended up in a gloomy forest. The trees were bare and effigies hung from the branches, looking creepy. Knowing the danger ahead was unpredictable, but the Orsker horde was getting very close. So Evie closed her eyes and ran blindly. She had only run a few dozen meters when she stepped into a net trap and was hoisted up a tree. Just as the Orskers arrived to finish her off, a fire image suddenly appeared and blasted them away. The fire was so hot Evie screamed. As he wondered why a kid was here, an archer quickly helped Evie down. Thanks to the coordinated efforts of the fire image and his team, the Orsker pack was quickly taken out. Lately, many Orskers had appeared in this area, so a subjugation team was sent to deal with them. The traps in the forest were set by them for Orskers, but unluckily Evie stepped in one. The 4 men were adventurers from the Fire Blade Party, the leader Jest, the axe-wielding Uncle Nuga, the archer Sypha, and the fire mage Radlow. The only female member was Mira from the Green Wind Party. Sypha wondered why Evie was wandering the mountains alone. She said she was traveling from Latomi village to Ostoga town. The adventurers mentioned they were from that town, so Evie could tag along. After a long trek, the group neared the subjugation team's camp. Evie saw Sleo still silently following unharmed and was overjoyed. However, if it kept lurking around, it would be caught by the subjugation team. So she quickly signaled it to hide. Inside the camp was spacious, with many adventurers gathered. The area was sprinkled with monster repellent, making it very safe. There was an empty tent next to the fire blades, so the leader said Evie could stay there temporarily. They had a strategy meeting to attend, leaving Evie in Radlow's care. Actually, it was his turn to cook, but with his top chef level skills, he always got criticized. Besides his 3-star fire attack skill, Radlow had no other talents. But he still wanted Evie to help prepare dinner. Evie marinated the rabbit meat with spices to remove the gamey smell, then fried it and stewed it with finely chopped vegetables and some herbs. Saying she was helping was an understatement. She basically did everything. The whole team tasted Evie's cooking and had to admit it was incredibly delicious. They gobbled it up, never expecting field rabbit meat to be so good. Even Mira, from afar, was drawn over to sneak a bite. Sypha thanked Evie for preparing dinner and scolded Radlow for not helping. Evie said it was a joint effort, as Radlow's fire control made it possible. Taking the compliment, the guy showed off by shooting a bright firework into the sky. Past life memories reminded Evie that fireworks come from reactions between fire and metal elements. Just then, Mira brought over some colorful metal scraps. Evie mixed rabbit bones with different colored metal samples and gave them to Radlow. Thanks to that, he created a sky full of colorful fireworks. A beautiful, peaceful scene in the forest for everyone. After the meal, Evie offered to help with the dishes. After all, they saved her from the Orskers. This was nothing. Radlow was so moved he hugged Evie, exclaiming he wanted a little brother like this. Late that night, Evie returned to her tent but didn't forget to bring a bunch of blue potions for Sora. Initially scared of the subjugation team, she was glad everyone was kind. The Fireblade team next door noticed Evie was too thin, probably malnourished. Also, the way she looked at the team leader when asking to help, like she expected to be abandoned if not useful. A kid so young, traveling alone, so pitiful. The next morning, Evie got up early to scavenge potions for Sora. There, she coincidentally met Mira, who was also feeding her slimes. Mira's slimes were a rare type that could digest metal. Tamers like her held high status, and Mira knew many famous people. Evie asked if she'd ever seen a melting slim. Mira confirmed they were so rare she'd never seen one. If she found one, selling it would make a fortune. Hearing this, Evie suddenly sensed that terrifying presence from before. Just then, the Fireblade team arrived with a bunch of broken weapons for Mira to handle. The creepy feeling vanished. Turns out, the Orskers were completely wiped out, so everyone could return to Ostoga town. That evening, Evie treated everyone to vegetable skewers and a delicious stew. With the monsters cleared, the adventurers could rest easy. Evie worried the subjugation team might fight Sleo and hoped he'd be safe. Past life memories reminded her that if a dangerous monster like Adondala was fought, news would spread quickly. After dinner, Sypha wondered why Evie, who cooked so well, was so skinny. Nuga even left his portion for her to gain strength, but eating more would make her stomach burst. Just then, Mira brought her to brothers, Top and Mamin, to say hello. Hearing Mira describe a smart kid named Evie, they hoped she'd join Green Wind when she grew up. Radlow immediately hugged Evie, declaring she was already his little sister, so no one else could claim her. He got a smack on the head from the leader for that. After Green Wind left, the Thunderlord adventurer team visited. Turns out, those twin brothers didn't get along with the Thunderlord leader, so they left. The bald leader told the Fireblade guys to take Evie to Ostoga town, making her very happy. That night, Sora got to gobble up a pile of blue potions and was overjoyed. Evie had to remind it to be quiet, or the other adventurers would notice. While playing happily, she felt that scary presence again and grew very worried. Just then, Radlow suddenly appeared, asking Evie to prepare breakfast for the group. Whenever she sensed that presence, it vanished when Radlow appeared. So Evie started suspecting Radlow, but Sora seemed to disagree. However, it could only say Pua, so Evie couldn't understand. She thought if Mira were here, she'd understand. Strangely, whenever she mentioned Mira's name, Sora transformed into a spiky ball. The Fireblade team was fine, but saying Mira's name made it bristle. This made Evie remember the smuggler at Latomi village gate when Sora reacted the same way. This shifted her suspicion to Mira. The next day, the girl followed everyone to Ostoga town. The gatekeeper asked for her origin, but Evie was afraid telling the truth would cause trouble. When asked if she had a guarantor, it turned out to be the red-haired captain. Evie showed her bank card as proof and was let through. Inside, Ostoga town was just as bustling and crowded as Latomi village. The Fireblade team then took Evie to the Adventurers Square to rest. Evie wondered why they didn't go home and learned a major threat was looming over the town. A criminal organization specializing in kidnapping and slave trading was active nearby. Adventurers had found their hideout, but information seemed leaked, so they caught no one. More worryingly, their primary targets were children. Unfortunately, Evie fit the criteria perfectly, so the uncles were determined to protect her at all costs. Hearing this, Evie had to mention she was being followed by something scary. The Thunderlord team then used a high-level magic item to create a soundproof space. Evie recounted being chased by purple light in the mountains. That morning at the dump, she also sensed the same presence, which vanished when Radlow appeared. Every time that scary thing disappeared, the first person to appear was him. Nuga speculated that Radlow's timely appearance might have scared it off. She also mentioned suspecting Mira, though it was hard to explain clearly. Everyone was shocked by this unbelievable guess. But Evie couldn't reveal Sora's secret for fear of endangering the little guy. However, that evening, Sora signaled it was okay to tell. This reminded Evie of Luba's advice: secrets eventually come out. The next morning, the two teams called Evie over and used the soundproof item to discuss something important. They had someone tail Mira and found her acting suspiciously. The entire Green Wind team met secretly with a traveling merchant. A Thunder Lord member pretended to pass by and ask, but Mira claimed it was just a lost merchant. Throughout, they used soundproof items, suggesting they were discussing something secret. Sypha checked with the merchant guild but found no recent major trade deals. If not regular commerce, it must be shady goods. Radlow couldn't believe it, as Mira was his childhood friend. However, the most surprised was Evie, who never thought they'd actually believe her. Radlow replied, "How could a kid who always brought them joy deceive those who saved her?" Feeling trusted, Evie decided to introduce Sora to the adventurers. The little Slim eagerly popped out to greet them. This was an ultra-rare Slim, capable of sensing bad people. Everyone agreed Evie should keep this secret, or she'd become a target. After revealing the truth, Evie felt a weight lifted. Sora's lie detection ability was truly overpowered. Radlow felt proud to be the first to know Evie to test the ability. An uncle introduced himself as Radlow, but Sora instantly turned spiky, proving he lied. The blonde uncle tried saying the wrong name again, and Sora spiked up immediately. Only when he said his real name and told the story of the bald guy sneaking Sypha's sake last night did Sora confirm it was true. Hearing this, Sypha immediately beat up the bald guy for stealing his sake. During the meal, they discussed the plan to catch the remaining criminals in town. Thanks to Evie, they confirmed the 3 members of Green Wind were the traitors. But Evie couldn't be happy, never expecting Mira to be bad. Radlow was sad too, as Mira was his childhood friend. Just recounted that about 10 years ago, a series of child disappearances occurred. Everyone thought it was monsters. Only 7 years ago was the organization's existence discovered. During the previous raid on their base, Green Wind was only notified 2 days in advance. Yet the traitors still got the info and escaped. Not only that, they also knew who the spies were and eliminated them. Just realized this organization was far larger than imagined. The Thunder Lord leader also had vital info. In the past, Green Wind was recommended by a noble to become high-rank adventurers for doing him some favors. This was rare, as most nobles dislike adventurers. To receive such favor, they must be very close. But according to Jest, Green Wind only helped that noble once. Even Fireblade and Thunder Lord had done tasks for nobles but never got such treatment. Evie thought the noble might have been testing who he could recruit. The blonde uncle blamed himself for not seeing it when even an 8-year-old could. But Evie corrected him, she was 9. Radlow was surprised, as she'd said 8 when entering town. Evie explained she was born in the 8th month, so today was officially her birthday. Everyone clapped and congratulated Evie. This was the first time since being abandoned that anyone had celebrated her. But to Radlow, Evie seemed older. Her behavior and cooking skills weren't like a normal child's. Back to the traitor story, Just realized if the noble was involved, things would get much tougher. The Thunder Lord leader suggested reporting to the Adventurer Guild Master, Guma, however. Evie was unsure if he was trustworthy. Later, she went with the adventurers to meet him. After Guma introduced himself, Little Slim confirmed he was good. His 2 guards, Buppy and Elope, were also confirmed good. To hide Sora's existence, the bald guy lied about having a gem that distinguishes good from evil and began explaining the plan to catch the traitors in town to Guma. Evie said the gem only worked for a week. So Guild Master Guma immediately announced a summoning of all adventurers for inspection. Then Evie was taken to a building said to be the organization's abandoned base. 2 self-defense force members were guarding it. Through inspection, Evie found one of them was bad and immediately reported to the captain. Buppy decided to use this place to inspect all adventurers. After a tiring afternoon, they identified 38 traitors infiltrating. Just then, the Count and the Lord arrived to inspect. Sora confirmed the Lord was normal, but the Count was a traitor. When they left, everyone was shocked, as the Count had always been hailed as the town's hero. Buppy punched the wall, blaming himself for telling the Count the previous raid plan, leading to many comrades' deaths. Evie also noticed that right after the adventurer summoning ended, the Count showed up. This meant many traitors were still hidden in town. Also, the previous raid found no evidence. How could they have disposed of it so quickly? Evie deduced that the traitor guard must have falsely reported on the area he was assigned to check. This logic left Buppy and Elope stunned, as they couldn't believe a kid only 6 years old came up with it. Actually, Evie was 9. Why did everyone keep getting her age wrong? The team then entered the room guarded by that traitor. Inside were many documents, making Radlow yawn constantly. He hated this stuff. Past life memories suggested that in detective shows, Clues are often hidden on bookshelves. Not knowing what a shell was, but it helped Evie discover a secret room behind the bookshelf. Inside were many chests of gold coins, making transport difficult. Buppy also found the organization's illegal transaction documents. On the way back, Sypha advised Evie to stay with Radlow for safety. Evie also asked Radlow to help her buy a basin that creates infinite water for easier laundry. Radlow had a lingering question: was Evie really a boy? Flustered, she apologized for hiding it. Radlow understood her situation and pretended he never heard it. After doing laundry, Mira suddenly appeared, inviting Evie for sweets. Since she was a traitor, Radlow wanted to tag along, deciding to take the group to his usual place. Mira agreed and also invited her to Brothers, worrying Radlow. Just as things seemed about to escalate into a fight, they ended up playing rock, paper, scissors. Clueless Radlow turned out to be a prodigy and even beat Mira. Choosing their own spot gave them an advantage over the enemies. The twin brothers immediately devoured all the sweets. Mira kept trying to act chummy with Evie, but Sora was desperately warning that these people were terrifying. These little shits were making Radlow furious. Anyone daring to bully Evie, he'd cut them down. The twins backed off quickly. Who would dare mess with a 3-star fire striker? They only had 2-star defense skills. Mira stepped in to stop them. What would a mere tamer like her know? Monsters aside, slimes were only good for eating trash. Evie disagreed, pointing out that Mira being a 2-star tamer was already amazing. Her 2 slimes were rare types that could digest metal. Waste management was also an important job. The twins still preferred money-making skills so they could quit this adventuring gig. On the way back, Radlow asked Evie about the situation. She thought he wanted to know about Sora's warning, but he just asked how the sweets were. The cafe owner used to be an adventurer, so it was safe. Going to the enemy's place risked getting drugged and passing out. When Radlow was little, kids here could run and play freely. But now, adults had to watch them everywhere, creating a stifling atmosphere. So Radlow wanted to restore peace to this village. Today's attempt by Green Wind to take Evie out was reported to the team. Daring to act in broad daylight was brazen. Why were they so reckless targeting Evie? Past life memories suggested Green Wind might just be a decoy. With traitors everywhere, both the guard and adventurers were paralyzed, not knowing where leaks came from. The organization's real target was recovering the money and documents in the base. Past life hinted this could be a lizard cutting off its tail. The organization was sacrificing Green Wind. After acting as decoys, they'd be silenced. Hearing this, Evie offered to make herself the decoy. That way, she could feed them false information like security at the building being lax, giving them a chance to retrieve evidence. Then they could catch them all in one go. Though brilliant, the plan was extremely dangerous. Even without pretending to be captured, Evie was already their target. They couldn't publicly announce the traitors without ruining the plan. Couldn't spread false info either, with so many traitors ready to stab them in the back. Evie suggested using sleep bombs on both enemies and allies to avoid casualties. When they woke up, just apologize. Evie kept proposing plans, leaving everyone conflicted. The organization still didn't know about Sora's existence. This was a perfect opportunity to strike. The next day, Evie was brought before all the adventurers, ostensibly to memorize faces, but actually to identify traitors. The very first person tested positive, unbelievable. Meanwhile, Alok noticed that Self-Defense Force Captain Buppy seemed to be smiling today. The usually gloomy guy, always brooding about the organization, was all smiles after talking to Evie. Just then, Sypha and the Fireblade team arrived, reporting a super strong monster nest in the forest requiring a subjugation team. While talking to Buppy, Sypha used coded words signaling their plan, but the guy didn't seem to get it. Luckily, Alok understood and immediately assembled a team as Sypha hinted. After Evie finished screening, the traitor adventurers were kept back by Guma while resting. Mira and her 2 brothers came by to check on Evie. Top and Mamin again tried to lure her for sweets, this time to their shop. Buppy still didn't understand Sypha's plan, but with many eavesdroppers around, Sypha couldn't explain. A subordinate ran to report that Alok had led a group out to subjugate monsters, thinning the town guard. So Buppy decided to assemble a group to stay and protect the town. As soon as the subordinate left, Sypha apologized for not explaining clearly, then pulled out sleep bombs for all the traitors to minimize casualties. Big Uncle Nuga even gave Buppy a bag of tools for dealing with high-level monsters. Below, Alok had chosen people to guard the old organization base, most of them traitors. Buppy had inserted some of his own men into this group to avoid suspicion. The Thunder Lord leader would lead the traitor adventurers into the forest for the subjugation, and then strike. Meanwhile, Evie was being led by Green Wind to a restaurant. Mira even suggested an eating contest, which the two brothers seemed keen on. Inside, Green Wind urged Evie to try the dango, saying it was delicious. Radlow, however, pulled a funny face, warning her this dish was so good it would knock you out. But with them pushing so hard, Evie went along. Radlow hadn't even ordered yet when Mira ordered a serving of dango for him too. The owner explained this dish was so delicious it could make you faint. Sora kept warning Evie about the danger from the owner. Radlow looked around warily and proposed a secret mission to Green Wind. The guard and adventurers had formed a monster subjugation team, so the town was short-staffed. This monster nest was rumored to even have an Orsker king, requiring many people. Even the guards at the old organization base were pulled away, weakening the town's defenses. If attacked now, it would be very dangerous, so he wanted Green Wind to help protect the town. The owner had finished preparing 5 servings of dango and didn't forget to lace 2 with sleeping pills for Radlow and Evie before serving. Top and Mamin, hearing about the protection request, seemed very cooperative. While everyone chatted, the owner slipped away to report the info to his superiors. Evie saw him leave, and Radlow was pleased the slave trading organization had taken the bait. He then directly asked why Green Wind had teamed up with them. Seeing them still denying it, Radlow demanded they eat the 2 drugged dango. With their plan exposed, Mira urged her brothers to stop, but they accused her of betraying the organization. Top and Mamin immediately drew weapons and attacked. Though Radlow lacked defense skills, he trained daily and was even confident he was stronger than the 2. He used fire skills to counter, but Top could extinguish them. However, 2 against 1, even a cripple wins, so Mira ordered her slimes to block her brothers, helping Radlow take them down. She deeply regretted deceiving Evie all this time. Just then, the owner, an acquaintance of Radlow's, appeared to help capture the 2 traitors. At the old organization base, the traitors suddenly launched an attack. Amidst the chaos, one led people inside, pointed out the secret room, and sent someone to fetch the Count. Soon, the Count arrived and ordered all evidence moved out immediately, but when he opened the secret room, a wave of sleep bombs exploded, knocking everyone out. Elsewhere, Buppy handed Elope an electric net launcher, also noticing the traitors behind them preparing to strike. One suddenly lunged but was blocked by Elope. Seizing the moment, the 2 captains coordinated, launching giant nets to catch the whole lot. Then they activated the electric shock feature, making even the toughest guys scream. These nets were designed for high-level monsters, so resistance was futile. Buppy then remembered some of those caught were his own plants and felt a bit bad. Behind them, the other uncles had already dealt with the traitor adventurers. They were just small fry, no match for Buppy and the uncles. By that afternoon, all traitors were captured and brought to justice. Radlow thanked Evie for bringing peace to the town. The Count was still loudly threatening everyone to release him or face punishment. However, the Lord already knew his scheme and had reported everything to the royal capital. Now he'd just have to go to prison and greet his new cellmates. Outside, crowds gathered at the gate to see the traitors. This worried the 2 captains as mobs could cause chaos. So Buppy stepped forward to persuade the people not to act rashly. Those criminals would surely be sentenced to slavery, forced to do hard labor to atone for their crimes. If the people insisted on execution now, the suffering awaiting them would lose its meaning. Hearing this, Evie thought the captain was truly amazing. If he hadn't spoken up, the crowd might have attacked the criminals. She understood that Captain Buppy was carrying all the burden, and she wanted to be as responsible when she grew up. However, Sypha advised her that the future was bright. Don't become a captain, it's too tough. With the crowd convinced, Buppy thanked Evie once more. The Thunderlord leader said there was one more thing they needed her help with. That evening, the guild master summoned those who had been hiding around the organization's base for Evie to inspect again. This time, the number was even larger than the previous adventurer group, but Sora indicated it was no problem. After the inspection, Captain Buppy again thanked Evie for bringing peace back to the town and asked her to sign a summary form to receive her reward. The reward for helping solve the case was 100 gold coins. Since some of the traitors were wanted criminals, the bounty for their capture was 50 gold coins. In total, Evie received 150 gold coins. Converting to field mouse units, this sum was equivalent to 150,000 field mice. Adding the 5,100 mice worth from Latomi village, Evie now had a total of 155,100 mice. She thought if she exchanged all this for dried meat, she could stockpile enough food for 140 years. Despite possessing such a huge fortune, Evie still went to the forest daily to check her mouse traps. She was a bit sad today as she caught none. Just then, Sleo emerged from the forest and herded a whole flock of mice into her traps, making her very happy. Past life memories suggested she could now use animals to assist in hunting. Evie processed the caught mice as usual, wrapped them up, and sold them to the butcher for some extra pocket money. After all this, Evie seemed to have become quite famous in the town. That evening, all members of the two adventurer teams and the self-defense force threw a victory party. The uncles kept giving Evie lots of meat to eat so she'd grow big and strong. The Thunderlord leader announced that the Count had finally confessed. The matter was over, at least for the townspeople. Under interrogation, the terrified Count spilled everything about the noble's dirty dealings, leaving the secretary with piles of paperwork. So, in the coming times, the royal capital would surely be very busy purging traitors. Evie wasn't too concerned about that. What she wanted to know most was Mira's situation. She was currently in a correctional facility counting down her days. However, she felt relieved not to commit further crimes. Greenwind was just a low-level part of the organization, so they hadn't committed many crimes and didn't know much crucial info. Moreover, Mira had betrayed the organization at the last minute, so she might receive leniency. Just then, the Adventurer Guild in the royal capital sent thanks and complaints to the Ostoga Guild. They thanked them for the massive info that helped destroy the organization, and complained about being swamped with paperwork. The guild master also sent deep thanks to Evie and her companions. Mentioning this, Uncle just apologized to Evie for not being able to fool the guild master. Both captains were questioned by him about Evie's magic item. After he checked all magic items worldwide, the Thunderlord leader apologized for not keeping her secret. Evie also apologized to the guild master for deceiving him. The guild master wanted to meet Evie's companion and she agreed. Sora immediately popped out to greet everyone, astonishing him. This was an extremely rare slim, the rarest of the rare. The guild master had heard of Evie's journey to the royal capital and invited her to stay in Ostoga town. It was also the wish of everyone present. If Evie had no urgent business, she could live here for a while. The adventurers would prepare everything she needed for her future life. Hearing this, Evie was deeply moved by their sincere invitation. In that moment, she remembered the fortune teller Luba's advice. If on her journey she found a place worth living, she should stay and find people she could trust to share joys and sorrows. So, Evie decided to reveal her life's biggest secret to everyone. She was an Unstarred One. Hugging Sora tight, she told them about her harsh childhood and her escape from Latomi village to Ostoga town. Evie thought they would judge her, but the opposite happened. Everyone around the table was moved by her story. This made Evie cry from overwhelming emotion. The guild master and everyone decided to keep this secret for Evie so she needn't worry. She bowed, thanking them all for their care and encouragement. However, she still decided to continue her exploration journey. Surprising Radlow, Evie explained that all this time, her exploration was really just running away, afraid that if discovered as an Unstarred One, she'd be dealt with immediately. But throughout her journey, she met so many kind people: the red-haired captain uncle, the bespectacled brother in Latomi village, and everyone here. They protected her whenever she was in danger. These people were completely different from any she'd known before. Finally, Evie understood the true meaning of the fortune teller's words about exploring the world. Thanks to them, she had changed. From now on, Evie would no longer run away, because even as an Unstarred One, there was nothing to fear. Hearing her heartfelt confession, the adventurers all supported Evie's determination to explore the world. Still, they were sad to be parting just when they were having the most fun. So Uncle just urged everyone to party hard while Evie was still here. The next morning, the girl bid farewell to everyone in Ostoga town to continue her journey. Radlow and the other guild members kept asking if she'd forgotten anything, but with her dozens of magic bags, she was confident she lacked nothing. Before Evie departed, Butby told her he'd researched the melting slim yesterday. It was an extremely weak slim type. Even a one-star tamer could overload it with magic and make it disappear. Precisely because Evie was an Unstarred One with almost no magical power, that she could tame Sora so easily. Past life memories made Evie believe Sora's existence was meant to meet her, and she felt that was true. Then Evie bid everyone farewell one last time before setting off. To Sypha, even though Evie was an unstarred one, her capabilities surpassed countless starred individuals. Finally, Evie, Sora, and Sleo continued their new journey. At the end of the story, there's a flashback to Little Slim Sora's past. It was born with its fellow melting slimes under the forest canopy, while Sora's friends kept disappearing due to external factors. Sora itself was blown by the wind to a field. This was the very first place it met its owner, Evie.